I'm Israel Anderson, and welcome to another Sunday Jesus service. Tonight, we are looking at Eden. Now, this is part of the larger Two Gardens and a Snake study, which I just looked at, and we have 150,000 views on Two Gardens and a Snake. I'm sure that is easily my most watched video. And what we're looking at here, let me expand this because I'll probably never find it again if it's not a little bigger. This is all part of the Two Gardens and a Snake study. It's rather huge, but we are going to focus today just on, oh, it's doing it to me again, on this little tiny subsection here. We're going to look at some of the parts of Eden, and most of this is not in Two Gardens and a Snake. So this is all part of building up the new Two Gardens and a Snake, which I'll release in January. It will be much longer and have far more detail, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. So we cover the basics to begin with, and then we'll go back all over it again and start really expanding on everything. And that way you don't have to watch many hours of content to kind of get the gist of what we're dealing with, okay? So Eden, let's look at some background context. We're going to look at these things taken in place, the fruit, good or bad, the shining one, and who lied and who didn't. And this will take us a little bit to get through. If you haven't watched Two Gardens and a Snake, if you haven't watched it recently, then I would encourage you to go watch it again. But this new one will be significantly increased in size. I think it's 2 hours and 40 minutes for the current one right now. The new one is probably going to be about 8 hours long. Not kidding. There's so much to go through. And I recorded that 5 years ago, Two Gardens and a Snake. And you kind of learn a lot in 5 years. So it's going to be a fun ride to go through when that is ready. And as I said, we'll do that in January, the whole thing. But we're going to cover some stuff now. And then next week on Sunday Jesus service, we're going to continue with this and look at more of these points. Okay, so let's look at some background context first. We're going to look at the reality of the divine council, a royal family council, two sons in conflict, and why this frame matters to everything. If you don't understand what's going on with the divine council, with the true nature of the Godhead, which is not a Trinity, then the Bible simply won't make any sense to you at all. Christianity has layered on all of these fantasy fictions. And when we start to understand what the Bible is actually saying, things look quite different. So, a divine council. There's no Trinity here. No co-equal, co-eternal persons of one substance. This is a real royal family in our real physical realm. Abba as the good father and high king, his sons and daughters as Elohim, each with their own rank, history, and jurisdiction. Jesus and Yahweh are not masks of one being. They are distinct Elohim in the same family with different characters and different records. This is the starting point for everything that follows. So in Christianity, you know, a lot of Christians or people investigating Christianity will look at Jesus and then read something from the Old Testament and go, wait a minute, this is not the same person. And then all these other people will pile on and say, yes, they are. No, they're not. They're entirely different individuals. They're both sons of the Father. So when we look at John 3:16, and in some translations it'll say God's only Son, but that word there, monogenes, in the Greek, doesn't mean only as in solitary, like number one. It means special, unique Son. Not a solitary son, but a son that stands out amongst all of the others, and that is Jesus, the firstborn. We have a royal family council. At the top is Abba, the good father and true source. Around him is a divine council of Elohim who rule regions and peoples on earth, or at least did. This is a political body, not a metaphysical puzzle. No Trinity here. Council members can be loyal, conflicted, or rebellious. They can make contracts, break them, and be judged. Jesus belongs to this family as the firstborn son who shares Abba's heart. Yahweh is a younger, highly empowered son who was given Israel as his portion, as his inheritance, and later became lawgiver, accuser, and adversary after trying to overthrow his father and being cast down to earth. Of course, this is not the story of Christianity. We have two sons in conflict. Within that council, Jesus and Yahweh stand in tension. Yahweh uses law, fear, curses, and controlled environments to secure obedience. Jesus submits to Yahweh's law in order to expose and legally dismantle it. He came to fulfill it, revealing Abba as a very different father. Eden, Exodus, Sinai, the wilderness testing, the cross, and the resurrection are all scenes in this family conflict. One son tightening his grip, the other fulfilling his terms to free the humans caught in between. Reading the Bible this way means tracking which Elohim is speaking and acting instead of assuming every divine voice is the same. And this is the dilemma that Christianity has created for itself by trying to, well, first of all, by translating every single character in the Bible that is an Elohim as God, this generic God word, which everybody defines their own way. There's no strict definition for the word God. But when you say that all of these different appearances of different individuals is all the same person, perhaps just different members of a Trinity, but still all the same, co-equal gods. There's a reason that the Trinity is a mystery. It's because it's not real. But when we start to see that they're all different, things start to make a whole lot more sense. Why this frame matters. If you import the Trinity, Eden collapses into a single God, both lying and telling the truth, both cursing and rescuing, both testing and delivering from the test. Nothing holds. Once you restore the divine council Godhead as a real family and council, the legal drama becomes readable. Yahweh's threats, traps, and broken promises belong to him. Jesus' truth-telling, self-giving, and legal obedience belong to him and Abba. This study begins right there, not with an abstract Trinity, but with the divided house of Elohim and a father who is nothing like the Elohim who claimed to be him. So we talk, you'll hear Christians all the time say, well, Satan wants to set himself up as God and have the whole world worship him as God. Yes, that is exactly correct. And you need to run with that a little bit and see where it ends up. Because that's exactly what has happened, right? All right, so that's some background context. Let's start taking a look at some of these events that happened in Eden. And we're going to start off with taken and placed, because Yahweh has a pattern of doing this. The Eden placement, controlled spaces, pattern of lies, and the desert placement. So, Adam and Eve are the first example. Yahweh takes the man and puts him in a specific garden to work it and guard it. The garden is not neutral. It is a staged zone where Yahweh's word and his single prohibition dominate the terms of life. Once they are relocated, their choices are no longer about a whole world of options, but about one tree inside an enclosed space under one Elohim's rules. So we notice that when we read the text. You know what I realized? We have not read the full text, and I was supposed to put it in here, and I think I did put it in here. But let's... we will need to read the story. Let me just get that set up real quick. We absolutely need to read the story. So, let me put that up onto this screen. Okay, it doesn't want to behave. All right. Let's see if I can bump that along. There we go. Okay. So, forgive my highlighting here. It's not relevant for this. Oh, it's too complicated to get rid of it. Let's read through the story of what happened in the Garden of Eden, so we have all of this text fresh in our mind before we start to go through and investigate what's actually going on here. So, remember that the titles that are printed above blocks of text in your Bible like this here, the temptation and the fall, put in there by Christian theologians. It's not part of the biblical text, all right? That is not part of the Bible. So you just got to be careful. Sometimes those titles are just fine. And sometimes, like here, they lead the witness in the wrong direction. So, Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was shrewder than any of the wild animals that Yahweh Elohim had made. He said to the woman, "Is it really true that Elohim said you must not eat from any tree of the orchard?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit from the trees of the orchard, but concerning the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the orchard, God said, Elohim said, you must not eat from it, and you must not touch it, or else you will die." Now, we know this is all talking about Yahweh, and so perhaps we should scroll up a little bit here so we can see in Genesis 2, verse 4. We've got two different creation accounts here. We covered this recently, so we're not going to cover it now, but here's the original creation account by the Elohim. And all the members of the Elohim are Elohim. But then we get to verse 4 here, and we start off here, and actually see where this large M dash is? That is actually the break between two portions of the text. The first portion, everything before this M dash, all of this, is what we call the priestly account. And this is the Elohim creating everything. And then we've got this second account that introduces Yahweh Elohim, one of the Elohim, who calls himself Yahweh. And that begins here after this M dash. So when Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens, and he gives his own story of events, of what happened, which contradicts the first event, and they cannot be harmonized. They are at absolute odds with each other. So he's got Adam and Eve, and now he's placed them in a garden. And I'm not sure if I can put my eyes directly on it here. Here it is. Yahweh Elohim took the man and placed him in the orchard in Eden to care for it and to maintain it, or to work it and to maintain it. So Yahweh has taken Adam and Eve from somewhere else and placed them into this small garden. So we continue here. The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit from the trees of the orchard, but concerning the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the orchard, God said," Elohim said, "you must not eat from it, and you must not touch it, or else you will die." Now, Eve adds something here to the conversation, and you must not touch it, and we will get to the significance of this as we go through this. But that was not part of the instructions given to Adam. The instructions given to Adam were simply, you must not eat from it. But then Eve adds, and you must not touch it, or else you will die. The serpent said to the woman, surely you will not die. For Elohim knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And lots of Christians say, well, this is the lie, right? The part that I have highlighted here, just coincidentally. But there's no lie there, and Yahweh will soon confirm that what the snake said was the absolute truth, and exactly what the snake said would happen, did happen. Verse 6, Genesis 3:6. When the woman saw that the tree produced fruit that was good for food, we're going to come back and look at that as well, was attractive to the eye and was desirable for making one wise, she took some of its fruit and ate it. She also gave some of it to her husband, Adam, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim moving about in the orchard at the breezy time of the day. So it must be like late afternoon. And Yahweh Elohim called to the man and said to him, where are you? And if you're going by the Christian understanding, the Christianity understanding of God, a lot of these things don't make sense. And so Christian apologists have really gone to great lengths to try to harmonize what's being said here. Because, for instance, well, why is Yahweh not knowing where they are? And so they'll make excuses and say, well, he knew where they were, but he was testing them. But a plain reading shows that Yahweh is not omniscient. He doesn't know everything. The man replied, I heard you moving about in the orchard, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And Yahweh Elohim said, who told you that you were naked? It's interesting that the first thing he thinks of is that somebody had spoken to them. Somebody had given them information. Who told you? And Yahweh doesn't know that neither. He's asking the question, where are you? Who told you? Yahweh is definitely not omniscient. Then he says, did you eat from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? Oh, so now he's got a second response. First, like, well, who told you? Oh, wait, did you eat from the tree? The man said, excuse me. The man said, the woman whom you gave me, passing the buck, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it. So Yahweh Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman replied, the serpent tricked me and I ate. Yahweh Elohim said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all the cattle and all the living creatures of the field. On your belly you will crawl, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. And I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. To the woman he said, I will greatly increase your labor pains, because why not? With pain you will give birth to children. You will want to control your husband, but he will dominate you. But to Adam, Yahweh said, because you obeyed your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. The ground is cursed because of you. In painful toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, but you will eat the grain of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat food until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you will return. And so here we see this stark contrast between the way Yahweh treats humans towards the way the Father and the Son, who are the leaders of the creation in the priestly account up in Genesis chapter 1, when they created everything and they created male and female together in the image and likeness, male and female, just like the Elohim. The man named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all the living. Yahweh Elohim made garments from skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. And Yahweh Elohim said, "Now that the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil," confirming that the serpent, the snake, told the truth. At no point did the snake lie. Or you could say, as Eve did, well, the snake tricked me, but he didn't lie. The snake told the absolute truth. It was Yahweh that lied about the toxic nature of the fruit, claiming that when you eat of it, you shall surely die. And we see that reflected further in what we just highlighted in Eve's response when she says, we can't just not eat it, we can't even touch it or we will die. Because the impression Yahweh has given to Adam and Eve is that the fruit is bad, the fruit is toxic, and if you eat it, you will die. That was a lie. And these are the kinds of things that Christian apologists will just go to such great lengths to try to twist and contort because it doesn't line up with their theology. Lines up with mine because I got my theology from the Bible instead of from a religious system that uses little bits and pieces of the Bible to support its religious claims. The Bible has the information that we need. So let's pick it up from verse 22. And Yahweh Elohim said, "Now that the man has become like one of us," as the snake said would happen, "knowing good and evil, he must not be allowed to stretch out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." So Yahweh Elohim expelled him from the orchard in Eden to cultivate the ground from which he had been taken. When he drove the man out, he placed on the eastern side of the orchard in Eden angelic sentries who used the flame of a whirling sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Adam and Eve have now been deprived of the very thing that will reset their biological immortality. All of the Elohim are just like us. We are made in their image and likeness, as they said. We have a spirit that is the essence of who we are, the real us, but we occupy a physical body, and they are no different. Body, spirit, image, and likeness. We are just like them. We could say we are Elohim light. We're not perfectly like them, totally like them, but we are made in their image and likeness, male and female, just like them. So now as we get back here to the Eden placement, we see Adam and Eve are the first example. Yahweh takes the man and puts him in a specific garden to work it and guard it. The garden is not neutral. It is a stage zone where Yahweh's word and his single prohibition dominate the terms of life. Once they are relocated, their choices are no longer about a whole world of options that they had back in the Genesis 1 story, but about one tree inside one enclosed space under one Elohim's rules. Controlled spaces. Yahweh has a pattern of removing humans from a wider context and reinstalling them inside a controlled environment under his direct rule. He does not simply meet people where they are. He isolates them, redraws the boundaries of their world, and then frames obedience inside that fenced-off zone as the whole definition of faithfulness. The setting itself becomes part of the control system. So he does it in the garden, and then he does it later. Across these moves, Yahweh's speech does not match outcomes. He brands the knowledge fruit as lethal when the narrative shows it's not. Did they die from eating the fruit? No, but Yahweh said they would. Yahweh lied. And this is not just my opinion. When you're looking at scholarship, not Christian apologetics, but true critical scholarship of the biblical texts, you will find the vast majority of biblical scholars freely admit Yahweh lied, the snake told the truth. Well, that goes against what a Christian apologist will say, who say the complete opposite. No, of course Yahweh told the truth and the snake lied. That's not what the text says. And that's why critical scholars align themselves with what the text says, and the Christianity apologist defends his religious beliefs at all costs, picking and choosing certain parts of the Bible to reinforce his theology, rather than accepting all of the words in context as they sit on the page. He brands the knowledge fruit as lethal when the narrative shows it's not, and he promises the Hebrews a land of freedom while first trapping them in a barren wilderness and binding them to his covenant obligations. None of that was talked about before they left Egypt. It was all sprung upon them, and they had no choice. And they couldn't get back. Yahweh blew a wind and parted the waters. There's no way for these people to retreat back to Egypt now, even though they immediately wanted to return to Egypt when they saw what Yahweh had led them into. The through line is the same. Yahweh takes and places people into environments he controls, and the promises that lure them there are not borne out in what actually happens. Yahweh says, I'm taking you to this beautiful place. I'm rescuing you from slavery. I'm going to take you to a land of abundance. That did not happen. The Hebrews are treated the same way. They are taken out of Egypt with promises of freedom, but instead of being restored to open life, they are placed in a desert under Yahweh's daily control, and then brought to Sinai, another tightly defined zone where Yahweh says that I have brought you out and brought you to myself. They are told this exit is so that he can bring us into his land. But functionally, they move from serving Pharaoh to serving Yahweh with little evidence of the promised freedom. And how many people actually ended up in the promised land? Almost none of them. The vast, vast, vast majority of all the people that left Egypt died in the desert. Yahweh lies to them in the garden about the fruit. He lies to the Hebrews about his motives for bringing them out of Egypt. Oh, I'm coming to rescue this. It's so bad for you here. I'm going to take you to a better place, flowing with milk and honey. Didn't happen. So taken and placed. The fruit, good or bad? Well, this is an interesting one. It's all interesting, but when we think about the fruit, we often don't think about the fruit as being poisonous, toxic. But we see from Eve's reaction and the snake's reaction that this idea that it's toxic is something that Yahweh has just made up, but that idea is certainly there. The fruit, good or bad. Good tree, good fruit. The story puts the knowledge tree in a garden where every tree is, quote, pleasant to the sight and good for food. These are Yahweh's own words early on. And names it in the same breath as the tree of life. Yahweh declares all the fruit are good, good for food. When the woman examines that tree, she sees it as good for food. Nothing in the narrative calls the tree poisonous or defective. Only Yahweh's threat suggests that. But there's nothing in a practical sense in the story that suggests that there's anything wrong with the fruit. It's just Yahweh's testimony. On the surface, that tree belongs to the all-good side of creation. So Yahweh references all of the trees, everything that grows, and says it's all good for food. And then he tells Adam, but for you, you don't touch this one or you will surely die. And then Eve adds later that we can't even touch it because it's a toxic fruit. And that's really the only sensible conclusion from what is going on and from the snake's reaction on being told that they would die from eating it. The tree only becomes a problem when Yahweh speaks a special command over it. He tells Adam he may eat freely from every tree except the knowledge tree, because when you eat from it, you will certainly die. That ties death directly to ingestion, like a poison label. At this point, there is no mention of expulsion, blocked access to the tree of life, or any other mechanism, just this threat. You eat the fruit, it'll kill you. Toxic by touch. By the time Eve speaks to the Nakash. Now, Nakash, that's the first time we've used that word here. I'm going to turn off my spell check because it's going to ping all these other words that are actually just fine. We're going to start to learn in the next section what this Nakash is. But the Nakash is the word we translate into snake or serpent. By the time Eve speaks to the Nakash, the prohibition has grown. She reports that they must not eat the fruit or even touch it, or we will die. That do not touch clause never appears in the original command to Adam, which suggests the warning has been amplified in transmission from Yahweh to Adam to Eve. The fruit is now framed as toxic on contact. You can't even touch it or you will die. Even though the narrative still shows it as good for food and only lethal because of Yahweh's escalating decree. You can't run away from the level of subterfuge and manipulation and deception that is going on here. And at whose hand is this all going on? Yahweh's. Yahweh's the one solely responsible for all of the deception here in this whole story. The snake didn't lie. Nakash pushback. The Nakash reacts to this amplified warning by flatly denying the lethal claim. You think, oh, well, it's just tricking them. No, it was Yahweh that tricked them. The snake didn't lie. The snake wasn't deceptive in any way. Eve has said, if we eat it or even touch it, it'll kill us. The snake's reaction is like, what on earth are you talking about? No, it won't. And of course, how would the Nakash know? Because the Nakash was intimately familiar with all of the trees of the garden. And so hence his reaction that we read back in the text. Like, what? You will surely not die. He's not trying to manipulate them. He's speaking the truth. And Yahweh then affirms that he is telling the truth. The Nakash reacts to this amplified warning by flatly denying the lethal claim. He tells the woman she will not die and instead describes real effects: opened eyes and becoming like Elohim, knowing good and evil. His response fits someone hearing an exaggerated order and correcting it, not a conspirator trying to lure them into obvious poison. Now, if the fruit was poisonous and it killed them when they ate it, well, then you could make the claim, well, the snake is against Adam and Eve here. He's trying to be disruptive. He's trying to kill them. But Yahweh said the fruit was toxic. The snake, upon hearing that, says, what are you even talking about? No, it won't. Oh, I know why he has told you that, because when you eat it, your eyes will be open and you will know good and evil like Elohim. And then Yahweh says, that is what happened. This story that's in the Bible, in your Bible, no matter the translation, is very different from the story that Christianity has told you. So now we're going to look at the Shining One. What is this word Nakash? This is a Hebrew word, and we're going to look at this in a bit of depth right now, because this is important. We are not talking about a literal snake crawling around the ground or crawling in the tree as some artists represent. We're talking about a person, an Elohim, a member of the Divine Council, and even Dr. Michael Heiser, who made the Divine Council more popular across Christianity, agrees with me on these points. The Nakash, the one talking to Adam and Eve in the garden, is not a snake. And we shouldn't translate it as a snake neither, because it leads people to the wrong impression, the wrong understanding of what the Nakash is. It is a person. It is the Shining One. And we will see this Shining One all through the Bible. The Nakash. In Hebrew, Nakash is not just snake. The same root also points to shining bronze and to someone who understands mysteries or reveals hidden things. It has this trifold meaning. So inside that one word, Nakash, you have serpent, shining, and secret knowledge fused together. Michael Heiser leans into this and says Genesis is using deliberate wordplay. Ha-Nakash, which just means the Nakash, is a shining one from the Divine Council. This is Dr. Michael Heiser. He says it is a high supernatural being, not a garden animal. So the real person in Eden is the Shining One, an intelligent, radiant being. And the serpent is his symbol, his badge, his brand in the story. You've got an individual whose symbol is a snake, but he is not a snake. The snake is his symbol, his brand, the way that he is known. When we translate it as snake and give people this impression that there is this slithering reptile talking to Adam and Eve, and then people are even discussing, well, how can a snake talk? And well, now we've got this talking snake to deal with. It wasn't a snake. It is a person. It is an Elohim. There is a thread running through the Bible that no one speaks of. The shining one is there in the start and the end. Genesis through Revelation. Let's look at some examples. And we're going to take our time here today. We're at 40 minutes into this recording. We're going to be here a little bit today as we look at just this one aspect. And this is just touching the surface. There's a lot. And in the full 2 gardens and a snake video we'll do in January, we will get all into this in great detail. Okay, looks like I have, let's see, different bits and pieces here that I need to, I'm always working on so much. We definitely can't lose that bucket one. That will be bad. Okay. So, oh, I just had one of my lights go out. That is not good. Oh well, we'll just have to deal with it. I need to buy new lights. So thank you to all these Founders Club members. Please join the Founders Club if you can. There is always upgrades to do. These are battery powered and they're years old, and I'm obviously going to need to replace them. But let's continue. The Creator Nakash. Creation myths around the world show the Nakash responsible for the creation. What? Across cultures, creation is often tied to a great serpent. Aboriginal traditions in Australia speak of the rainbow serpent as an immortal god, creator god who shapes the land, waters, and life itself, laying down laws for the people. In Greece's Orphic stream, a cosmic serpent, Ophion and the serpent, coiled around the world egg, helps generate the universe. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, is a prime creator and culture bringer. And in South Asian mythologies, cosmic serpents, Shishir and Nagas, uphold the world and mediate creation and renewal. Taken together, these stories form a consistent pattern. The serpent is not Satan, but a world shaper, a shining boundary crosser who links heaven, earth, water, and the birth of order from chaos. That pattern makes the Eden Nakash as co-creator or shining one far from an isolated idea. It fits a global mythic memory in which the serpent stands at the origin of worlds, knowledge, and the first ordering of creation. Across the world's myths, from Australia to Africa to India to the Americas, you keep running into the same figure, a great serpent who shapes the land, encircles the world, upholds creation, and co-creates humans and the ordered cosmos, exactly as we see in the first creation account. So when we read Eden with the Nakash as a co-creator or world shaper instead of a cartoon villain snake, we're not being weird at all. We're actually right in line with how countless cultures have already told the story of the beginning. And we've gone into plenty of other studies where we've looked at how we can look at all these different mythologies all around the world, and we see it's all the same royal family and the members of the royal family, because we can see that all of their nature and characters align, and we can put them in a chart, all these different mythologies, and see we've got the father and the 2 primary sons and all of their other family members, and we see it all over the place. So let's look at some examples. I'm not sure I'm going to read all of these out, but I will put them on the screen long enough that you can pause your screen and read them, okay? Let's read a few, though. The rainbow serpent. In Aboriginal Australia, the rainbow serpent is a great snake who shapes the land, carves out rivers, and brings life-giving water across the continent. I am not going to pronounce any of these things properly, so, just forgive me in advance. Agunua. In the Solomon Islands and nearby Papuan Islands, Agunua is a great cosmic serpent god who embodies and upholds the structure of the universe. In the Yucatan Peninsula, mayor of southern Mexico, Kukulkan is the feathered serpent deity associated with creation, rain, and the founding of cities and temples. And so we can go through all of these. As I said, I will just scroll through these gently like this. But you've got them in India. Let's look at just the countries here. We've got West Africa. We've got this cosmic serpent who either is the creator or helps the creator, which makes sense. Father and Son. Jesus is the core creator in Genesis chapter 1, and there's even widespread Christianity agreement on that. Of course, we see that mirrored in John chapter 1 as well. Norse mythology, same thing. We have this world serpent who is responsible for creation and the cosmos. Quetzalcoatl in central Mexico, same deal, feathered serpent. Guatemalan highlands, we've got a feathered serpent. In ancient Egypt, the Nile Valley, the creator god Atum can appear as a primeval serpent at the beginning and the end of the world, coiled in the first waters. Water is also a great connection here. In the Andes, ancient Peru and Bolivia, Amaru is a powerful serpent tied to ordering of the natural world and the link between earth and sky. So this is not an uncommon thing. We see that the world's mythologies understand that the Nakash is the creator, not Satan. It's Christianity that has told us, oh, it's Satan. Now let's move to what we see in Eden. In Eden, the shining one is Hanakash, the serpent diviner. Not a diviner as in someone holding two pieces of wire and looking for water. The serpent diviner, whose very root ties serpent divination, and like divination as in having divine knowledge and understanding and wisdom, who gives true divine information that Yahweh tried to suppress. He stands in the garden as a radiant divine counsel being who exposes the lie around a tree already called good for food and is cursed by Yahweh for it. The Shining One opens their eyes, allowing them to perceive good and evil. He then remains with Adam and Eve rather than abandoning them, and accepts Yahweh's curse, even as Yahweh says he will turn the humans against him. Don't miss this important detail. The Shining One did not flee from Yahweh. He remained with Adam and Eve, awaiting Yahweh's arrival. What does that tell you? If you've done wrong, and you know you've done wrong, you don't hang around. But if you've done right, you stand accountable. You have nothing to worry about. You didn't do anything wrong. Yahweh doesn't, the Nakash does not run away. It knows Yahweh's going to return. The Nakash remains and stands with Adam and Eve, waiting for Yahweh to come back and exact his retribution on them. And the snake, you could say, suffers more than Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were not cursed. The ground was cursed, and you could say that giving birth was cursed, I suppose. But it was the snake that was cursed, the Nakash that was cursed. So think about that. The Nakash stuck around. It stayed with Adam and Eve. We know it's a he because it says earlier in the story. He stuck around, remained with Adam and Eve, waiting for Yahweh to return. And that's a lot to unpack. What is going on there? I mean, I've been thinking about this a long time, and the more I think about it, the more significant this becomes. The snake sticks around. Why? Why? Did the Nakash love Adam and Eve? Why would the Nakash stick around? I mean, hopefully for at least some of you, this is going to grind your gears for a long time. Wait, what? Why have I never been told this before? Why has no one ever pointed this out before? The Nakash stuck around. Didn't have to. It was obviously some time because Adam and Eve had already sewed together some rudimentary clothing from fig leaves, from large trees that are around, large leaves. And the snake's just like, hey, I'll stick around with you guys. We'll wait for Yahweh to come back. We'll see what he has to say. What? Has anyone ever told you that about this story? Have you ever noticed that before? There's a lot of significance there. There's a lot of significance there. Now, we continue to the Exodus. The Shining One heals the people. Yahweh was murdering with snakes, turning the people against the Shining One. This is what Yahweh said. He said to the snake, I am going to turn them against you. And so here is Yahweh in one of his final acts of this 40-year tragedy in the desert. He starts to murder a whole bunch of people with poisonous snakes, turning people against the Nakash. In the wilderness, the Shining One appears as the Nakash Nekoshet. What? These two words are related, and as we go into the larger study, we will go into these words in more detail and see how they share the same root. But this is Nakash, is more like the serpent. Nekoshet is more like the shining bronze, something that is shining, something that is polished and shining, like bronze. The bronze serpent lifted on a pole, a forged image of the very serpent's bringing judgment, now gleaming in the sun as the single focal point of both curse and healing. All these connections to Eden. The people live by fixing their gaze on this shining serpent. Wait, that's like the cross. Well, we'll get there. The snake is a metal condensation of the Eden Nakash logic. The figure Yahweh curses, the figure that Yahweh curses becomes the means of life. So here is Yahweh turning people against the snake, sending poisonous snakes. Many people are dying. And then what does Yahweh do? Yahweh had Moses break his own law to build the symbol of the Nakash. You're not allowed to make graven images, remember? That's part of the Ten Commandments. And yet, Yahweh is now telling Moses to break not just one of the 613 laws of Torah, but one of the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments themselves. What? And looking at this graven image of a shining bronze snake brings life. What is going on here? The people looked unto the Nakash and were healed. Are the dots starting to connect? All of these important dots, these connection points all through the Bible that Christianity doesn't breathe a word of because it will undermine their Roman Catholic theology, which is where all Christianity theology derives from. Wow. So there we see it in the Exodus. Then we come to John chapter 3. In John 3, Jesus openly identifies himself with that Exodus shining one. What? Get out of here. This is crazy. How can this be possible? Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, we know exactly what that's talking about, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Fusing his own crucifixion to the bronze serpent's life-giving role. They were being attacked by serpents, just like Jesus talks about the religious leaders being poisonous vipers. And then he says, but when the people look to me on the cross, they're going to be healed. Just like when they looked to me when I was lifted up by Moses in the desert. The shining Nakash is now the crucified Son of Man, who's being lifted up turns the emblem of judgment into the conduit of eternal life. Jesus draws attention to this 3 times in the Gospel of John. 3 times. Why? Why? If the snake is Satan, would Jesus be making this absolute connection to the Nakash? Unless he is that true Nakash. Is Jesus the Nakash? In Revelation 1 through 2, the same shining one is explicitly named as Jesus. One like the Son of Man, with eyes like flame and feet like burnished bronze, whose face blazes like the sun in its strength. The Eden Nakash and wilderness bronze serpent imagery converge here in the exalted Christ, the radiant bronze-limbed figure who returns as the unveiled shining one of the whole canon. What? So who is he? In Eden, the only one who accurately describes the tree, doesn't lie, tells the truth, is the Nakash, which already puts him closer to Jesus than to Yahweh. Jesus doesn't lie. Yahweh does. Yahweh threatens, in the day you eat from it, you will surely die. Yet the humans eat, stay alive, talk, and only become mortal when Yahweh later blocks the tree of life. The Nakash promises opened eyes and becoming like Elohim, knowing good and evil, and the story itself from Yahweh's own lips confirms exactly that outcome. This Yahweh himself admits the snake told you the truth. What does that tell us about Yahweh? Later, Yahweh sends venomous serpents in the wilderness and then orders a bronze serpent lifted up on a pole so that anyone who looks at it lives. The Nakash is once again bringing life instead of death. To be noted, Yahweh instructs Moses to break his own law to bring the required rescue. I tell you what, what's going on in that story? There's a lot more going on in that story. You think Yahweh just tells Moses to break one of his 10 commandments? Sounds like somebody forced Yahweh's hands. Sounds like Yahweh got himself into a predicament that he couldn't get himself out of. Moses is crying out and saying, they're all dying. There's a tragedy. What do we do? And then the Shining One gets lifted up, and all who look upon the Shining One are healed. The Nakash. Jesus then explicitly identifies himself with that lifted serpent, saying the Son of Man must be lifted up in the same way so that those who look to him have life. He also tells his followers to be wise as serpents and contrasts a good father who gives fish instead of snakes with the God who weaponizes food and serpents against his own people. Read as a legal narrative chain, the truth-telling Shining One in Eden, the life-giving bronze serpent, and the crucified, lifted up Jesus are the same person. Jesus is the Nakash, exposing Yahweh's false threat and revealing the ongoing clash between Yahweh and the Nakash. Now, there's a lot more we can get into here, and in the new study of Two Gardens and a Snake, we will go deep into the Hebrew and look at this word Nakash, and we'll look at more of what Dr. Michael Heiser had to say. Dr. Michael Heiser agreed on some things, certainly not everything. But it is useful to draw upon one of the most respected Christian scholars of our era, who on the point of the Nakash in the garden not being a snake, but being a member of the divine council, one of the Elohim, we are in full agreement on. I know it's difficult to look at that garden in the snake, look at that snake in the garden rather, after you have gone through your whole life as a Christian and being told, but this snake is the devil. And isn't that snake the one in Revelation 12:9 that is cast into the pit? Well, if we go and look at those passages, especially the verse before, we'll see that the word dragon, Draco in the Greek, is used 4 times. We have a qualifier here. So, the snake in the garden is not a dragon. Nowhere is the Nakash ever described as resembling a dragon, but Yahweh is. That's interesting. Yahweh is the dragon. Now, if we want to get technical, Yahweh has a pet dragon. Other Bible scholars have done studies on Yahweh being the dragon. This is not my idea. But I don't have a study on it yet, but we will produce one next year. There are many very seasoned Hebrew scholars that have produced large works talking about how Yahweh is the dragon. This is not my invention. This is biblical scholarship. So that dragon in Revelation 12:9 is not the Nakash in the garden. It is not the Nakash in the Exodus. It is not the Nakash nailed to a cross. It is not the Nakash in the Lord's revelation to John. That's the shining one. There's so much going on here. But we have been told this wild story by Christianity, this dumbed down story, and we are expected to just believe it. But it's not what the Bible actually says. It's just a story, a narrative that has been laid over the biblical text. It's like a pair of glasses. I don't have a pair of readers here or something. Maybe I can grab something. No, I thought it'd be a good prop. My blue blockers. But this is a prime example, actually. So I put my blue blockers on. Oh, now everything is yellow. How wild. It's all yellow-orange. Everything looks strange. This is what happens with Christianity and reading the Bible. These are Christianity. And you have to take them off if you're going to see how things really are. Because once you put them on, now you see everything, no matter what it is, through the vision of Christianity, a religious system that is born of the church fathers and their Greek metaphysics, who created a fantasy fiction story. And they want you to put on these stories and see the whole world through their glasses, through their lenses. And the challenge for you today is to say, no more. I want to see plainly. The Bible has answers for us. But if we're going to read them through some other philosophy's lens, we're going to see everything through that lens. We're not going to see things how they really are. So those blue blockers, I've got different bits of blue all around me, but when I put those glasses on, the blue disappears. Now all the blue is absorbed by my lenses, and I can't see blue anymore. I'm missing out on an entire spectrum of the visible light spectrum. I can't see blue anymore. That's what Christianity does to us. That's why after a lifetime of ministry in Christianity, I had to walk away from the cult. I had to take the blue blockers off. Because you can't see truth with them. You have to take them off first. Does that make sense? The challenge to you today is, will you take off the blue blockers? The blue blockers, the truth blockers. Who lied and who did not? In the Eden story, Yahweh gives the first law with a death threat attached. From the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you must not eat, for in the day you eat from it you will certainly die. The narrative then shows the opposite. They eat, their eyes open, they remain alive, they speak, they sow fig leaves, they hear Yahweh walking, they answer him. Whatever die means here, it does not happen in the day they eat. And of course, all kinds of things. Well, 1,000 years is to a day for God. All these kinds of weird arguments that are brought in to try to excuse away. Well, they didn't die like Yahweh said they would, which makes Yahweh a liar. You don't have to make all these excuses. You just have to recognize Yahweh for who he is. He is the lying murderer from the Genesis. John 8:44. Death only comes into play later when Yahweh expels them from the garden and blocks the tree of life specifically to prevent them from living forever by his own testimony. The lethal factor in Yahweh's ongoing restriction is not the chemistry of the fruit. Traditional readings try to rescue Yahweh by redefining his words. Day becomes error. Die becomes spiritual death. Well, they died spiritually. You don't understand. I used to say all those things too, until I took the glasses off. And the mismatch is buried under later doctrine. All of these things are just invented over time, end up being repeated, and people today, they don't know any better, and they just regurgitate the same things. The same things. In the story itself, Yahweh weaponizes a tree already described as good for food. That's what he said before he then told Adam, oh, don't eat that one, it's going to kill you. And uses an overstated death threat to enforce his command. When the humans eat and do not die, he changes the terms unilaterally by cutting them off from the tree of life. Never said anything about that before. Legally, that puts him in the role of deceiver and enforcer, and leaves the Nakash as the one who told the truth about what the fruit would do. Yahweh lied. The Nakash told the truth. The Nakash, by contrast, contradicts Yahweh's threat and predicts two concrete effects. You will not certainly die, and your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. The story then affirms both points. They do not die that day. Their eyes are opened. And Yahweh himself confirms the rest when he says, the human has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. On the face of the text, every specific outcome the serpent forecasts comes true. And the central element of Yahweh's threat does not. Read as a legal record rather than theology, the serpent's statement is accurate. Yahweh's is not. There is a liar in Eden. It is not the Nakash. It is not the serpent. Who is the serpent? This has been, I've seen the feedback for 5 years now when people watch Two Gardens and a Snake. And if you haven't watched it, you should go and watch it right now. 150,000 views so far, my most popular video. Go and watch Two Gardens and a Snake. But in January, we're going to have a huge update to that. And it'll be broken down into about a 1 hour initial presentation and then 6-7 hours of going deeper and deeper into each part of that initial presentation. The one who lied in Eden was Yahweh. The snake wasn't going to kill them. Yahweh killed them by cutting them off from biological immortality. Yahweh lied. The snake, the Nakash, the shining one, Jesus, told the truth. I will go into this in far more detail when we release the new version next year. I know this is difficult to accept. The snake in the garden is Jesus? I can't see it any other way. And I saw it the Christian way all my life. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Yahweh then continues to steal, kill, destroy, lie, deceive, manipulate throughout the entirety of the Old Testament record. Jesus never did anything like that. Now you've got people saying Jesus is Yahweh. Really? Hopefully you've watched this, and hopefully you go watch Two Gardens and a Snake. Got to take those glasses off. You can't look at the world through a philosophy that was created by people to deceive you. Christianity is the other gospel that we were warned about. Jesus said, broad is the path, and many who find it that walk to destruction. But the gate to life is narrow, and few find it. Christianity is the largest religious system that has ever existed on the face of this planet, estimated today to be 2.5 billion people. That's not a narrow way that few find. Then when you couple in Yahweh's other cults, when you look at Judaism, when you look at Islam with Allah, which is just the Arabic word for God, it's the same individual as Yahweh. Then when you look at Hinduism, and you look at the primary gods there, we see again the Father and two primary sons, along with other extended family members. We have Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. Well, Shiva, the destroyer, is the primary god of Hinduism that is worshipped today. He has supplanted most of the other Hindu gods. So if you looked at, and there's many more religious systems that have Yahweh as their center. Even, I mean, you can go really strange here. You can look at Freemasonry. Freemasonry has Yahweh as their God. Yahweh is the most worshipped God of this entire world. He is the God, the Elohim of this world. Jesus has freed us legally, and all we need to do is choose another Lord. As Jesus said, you cannot serve two lords, for you will love one and despise the other. There's no serving Yahweh and Jesus here. It won't work. That's why when I teach what Jesus had to say about Yahweh, they all appeal to Yahweh. No, but Yahweh says he's the king, he's the God, he's the one. So I could say that too. That wouldn't make it true. And soon Jesus and his Father and their kingdom will return to initiate the physical separation of humanity away from Yahweh. The dragon is going into the pit. So let's pray. Father, we recognize this is challenging to have these stories that we know so well flipped on their heads. The cognitive dissonance, the confusion, the obvious knee-jerk reactions to, well, this is deception, this is a lie, etc., etc. We ask for your Spirit of truth to come and fill us and teach us and remind us of the very things that Jesus taught his disciples. We ask that you would deliver us from any imposter spirit that would be seeking to influence our thoughts. We ask for your Holy Spirit, Father. We ask that your Holy Spirit would come and fill us and saturate us. We invite you to come in to this temple and make your dwelling place right here in my heart. I choose your Son, Jesus. I choose his life and his death, his sacrifice, his healing. I will look up at the one placed up on the pole, and I will receive my healing. I ask, Father, that you would draw every single person listening to this prayer right now, that you would make yourself available to every single person listening to this prayer right now, that you would bring your life, your Spirit into their body, that you would bring that Spirit of truth, that we would be able to discern truth from error, and that even in our confusion, we would constantly, choice after choice, put your Son first. We look forward to seeing you. We think it's soon. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. We need you now. And of course, we say and we ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Well, I appreciate you for being with me today. This is now part of our larger Sunday service, and it is now 3 p.m. Mountain Time, so we've been streaming here for 3 hours exactly, and I would encourage you to come and watch us live. You might be watching this somewhere else. But we recently just changed the time. Well, recently, this is the first Sunday we've done it at this time. So it's now 12 p.m. Mountain Time or 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will continue to do this every Sunday. So come and spend a few hours of your week learning about the truth of the Bible, of the kingdom, the gospel of the kingdom, and may you be empowered to take it out to the rest of the world. And if you're wrestling with these things were challenging that we went through today. It's okay. Just wrestle with it. You don't have to believe anything that I have spoken today. You can just say, well, isn't that interesting? And make sure you go now and watch Two Gardens and a Snake. You'll find that will provide far more context of the bigger picture than what we've been able to go through here today. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for sharing some of it with me. Bye-bye.